Hello there and welcome to this episode of Psychology Insights. I'm Dr. Michael Harris, and today we're diving deep into a topic that affects millions of people worldwide: social anxiety. Have you ever felt your heart racing before entering a room full of strangers? Or perhaps you've declined invitations to social gatherings because the mere thought of interacting with others filled you with dread. If so, you're certainly not alone. Social anxiety is one of the most common psychological challenges people face today. But here's the good news: there are proven, effective strategies to overcome it. In the next hour, we'll explore practical approaches that can transform your social experiences from moments of fear to opportunities for connection and growth. Social anxiety isn't just ordinary shyness or nervousness. It's an intense fear of social situations where you might be judged, scrutinized, or embarrassed by others. This fear can be so powerful that it disrupts daily functioning, affects relationships, and significantly diminishes quality of life. But I want you to remember something crucial as we begin. Social anxiety is not a character flaw or weakness. It's a psychological condition that can be understood and effectively managed with the right tools and knowledge. Today's episode is particularly special because we'll be exploring evidence-based strategies that have helped thousands of my clients and research participants overcome debilitating social anxiety. We'll cover cognitive restructuring techniques, exposure therapy approaches, mindfulness practices, social skills development, lifestyle modifications, and technological aids that can support your journey to social confidence. I'll also share real-life success stories from individuals who once struggled with severe social anxiety, but have since transformed their lives. So whether you're listening because you personally struggle with social anxiety, you're supporting someone who does, or you're simply interested in understanding this common psychological challenge better, I'm confident you'll find tremendous value in today's discussion. Let's begin this journey of transformation together. Before we dive into specific strategies, I think it's important to understand exactly what social anxiety is and how it manifests in our lives. Social anxiety disorder, also known as social phobia, affects approximately 7% of the adult population in any given year. But many more experience subclinical levels of social anxiety that, while not meeting the full diagnostic criteria, still significantly impact their quality of life. Social anxiety manifests in three primary ways: cognitive, physical, and behavioral. On the cognitive level, social anxiety involves negative thoughts and expectations about social interactions. These might include fears of being judged negatively, concerns about saying something embarrassing, or worries about showing visible signs of anxiety like blushing or trembling. There's often an excessive self-focus and a tendency to overestimate the likelihood and severity of negative social outcomes. Physically, social anxiety triggers the body's fight or flight response. This can lead to symptoms like rapid heartbeat, shallow breathing, sweating, trembling, blushing, muscle tension, dry mouth, and even nausea or dizziness in severe cases. These physical symptoms can be extremely uncomfortable and often become the focus of additional worry, creating a vicious cycle where the fear of having these symptoms actually intensifies them. Behaviorally, social anxiety typically leads to avoidance of feared situations. This might mean declining party invitations, staying quiet in meetings, avoiding eye contact, or escaping social situations as quickly as possible. While avoidance provides temporary relief, it actually reinforces anxiety in the long run by preventing you from learning that your fears are often exaggerated. It's worth noting that social anxiety exists on a spectrum. Some people experience it only in specific situations, like public speaking or dating, while others feel anxious in virtually all social interactions. Understanding where your own anxiety falls on this spectrum can be helpful in developing targeted strategies for overcoming it. Now, you might be wondering, why do some people develop social anxiety while others don't? Research suggests that social anxiety stems from a complex interplay of genetic, environmental, and psychological factors. There appears to be a genetic component as social anxiety disorder runs in families. Early life experiences, particularly negative social experiences like bullying or criticism, can also contribute. Additionally, observing anxious behavior in parents or other role models can teach children to fear social situations. From a psychological perspective, certain cognitive patterns are strongly associated with social anxiety. These include a tendency toward perfectionism, heightened sensitivity to criticism, and an external locus of evaluation, meaning that you place excessive importance on others' opinions of you. People with social anxiety often have distorted beliefs about social interactions, such as, I must never appear anxious, or if someone doesn't like me, it means I'm unlikable. Understanding these underlying mechanisms is crucial because effective treatment addresses not just the symptoms of anxiety, but also these root causes. With that foundation established, let's move on to our first set of strategies, cognitive restructuring techniques. Cognitive restructuring is based on the premise that our thoughts directly influence our emotions and behaviors. In social anxiety, problematic thought patterns create and maintain anxiety. By identifying and modifying these thoughts, we can significantly reduce anxious feelings and behaviors. Let me walk you through the key cognitive restructuring techniques that I've found most effective in my clinical practice. The first step is becoming aware of your automatic negative thoughts related to social situations. These thoughts often occur so quickly and habitually that you might not even notice them consciously. Start by keeping a thought record for a week or two. Whenever you feel anxious about a social situation, whether it's before, during, or after the event, write down the situation and the thoughts going through your mind. Common automatic thoughts in social anxiety include catastrophizing, everyone will think I'm a complete fool, mind reading emails, they can tell I'm anxious and think I'm weird, personalizations, that person yawned because I'm boring and all, or nothing thinking if I make one mistake in my presentation, it will be a total disaster. By capturing these thoughts on paper, you start to gain some distance from them, which is the first step toward change. Once you've identified your automatic thoughts, the next step is to evaluate them objectively. For each thought, ask yourself, what evidence supports this thought? What evidence contradicts it? Are there alternative explanations or perspectives? What would I tell a friend who had this thought? Is this thought helpful or unhelpful for me? This process helps you recognize that your anxious thoughts are not necessarily accurate reflections of reality. They're often distorted by cognitive biases that are common in social anxiety. By examining the evidence and considering alternatives, you begin to loosen the grip these thoughts have on you. Next comes the most crucial step, developing more balanced, realistic alternative thoughts. These aren't necessarily positive affirmations. In fact, overly positive statements can feel inauthentic and unhelpful. Instead, aim for thoughts that are both realistic and helpful. For example, instead of, everyone will judge me negatively, a more balanced thought might be, some people might not be interested in what I have to say, while others might find it valuable. Either way, one social interaction doesn't define my worth. It's important to practice these alternative thoughts regularly, especially before entering anxiety-provoking situations. With time and repetition, they'll start to become more automatic than the negative thoughts they're replacing. Many of my clients find it helpful to create coping cards. Document on their phones a collection of their most useful alternative thoughts that they can quickly reference when anxiety strikes. Another powerful cognitive technique is examining and updating your core beliefs about yourself and social situations. Core beliefs are deeply held convictions that influence how you interpret experiences. Common problematic core beliefs in social anxiety include, I'm fundamentally unlikable, I must be perfect to be accepted, or making mistakes in public is unbearable. To identify your core beliefs, look for patterns in your automatic thoughts. What deeper assumptions might they reflect? Once identified, evaluate these beliefs just as you would automatic thoughts, looking for evidence for and against them. Then work on developing more nuanced, compassionate alternative beliefs. This is often challenging work that benefits from the guidance of a therapist, but it can lead to profound and lasting changes in how you experience social situations. Finally, a technique called cognitive diffusion can be incredibly helpful for managing anxious thoughts in the moment. Cognitive diffusion involves creating psychological distance between yourself and your thoughts. Instead of being swept away by the thought, I'm going to embarrass myself, you learn to observe it as just a thought, not necessarily reality. Techniques include prefacing thoughts with, I'm having the thought that, or imagining thoughts as leaves floating down a stream while you sit on the bank, observing them without being carried away. These cognitive techniques are powerful, but they work best when combined with another essential strategy for overcoming social anxiety, exposure therapy. Let's talk about that next. Exposure therapy is considered the gold standard treatment component for anxiety disorders, including social anxiety. The basic principle is simple yet profound: systematic, gradual exposure to feared situations leads to habituation, where the anxiety response naturally diminishes over time. Our brains are remarkably adaptable, and exposure harnesses this neuroplasticity to recalibrate our fear response. To begin with exposure, you'll want to create what therapists call a fear hierarchy, a list of anxiety-provoking social situations ranked from least to most challenging. For example, your hierarchy might start with texting an acquaintance, move up to making small talk with a cashier, and eventually include more challenging scenarios like giving a presentation at work or attending a party alone. The key to effective exposure is to work your way up this hierarchy gradually, starting with situations that cause mild to moderate anxiety, around 4 or 5 on a scale of 0 1 of. Stay in each situation long enough for your anxiety to peak and then begin to subside, which typically takes 20-45 minutes. Don't escape or use safety behaviors like checking your phone constantly, as these prevent full emotional processing. Repeat exposures to each situation until it causes significantly less anxiety before moving up to more challenging items on your hierarchy. There are several types of exposure that can be particularly effective for social anxiety. In vivo exposure involves facing feared situations in real life. This is generally most effective, but can be challenging to arrange for certain scenarios. If real-life exposure isn't immediately feasible, imaginal exposure, vividly imagining the feared situation while noting and tolerating any anxiety that arises, can be a helpful stepping stone. Role-playing exposure with a therapist or trusted friend allows you to practice challenging social scenarios in a supportive environment. And with today's technology, virtual reality exposure is becoming increasingly accessible, offering realistic simulations of anxiety, provoking social situations that you can practice with repeatedly. It's important to approach exposure with the right mindset. The goal isn't to eliminate anxiety completely. That's neither realistic nor necessary. Instead, the aim is to learn that you can function effectively even when experiencing some anxiety, and that the catastrophic outcomes you fear rarely materialize. Each exposure is an opportunity to gather evidence that challenges your anxious predictions. One particularly powerful form of exposure for social anxiety is called interoceptive exposure. This involves deliberately triggering the physical sensations associated with anxiety, like increased heart rate or shortness of breath, through exercises such as spinning in a chair or hyperventilating briefly. By becoming more familiar and comfortable with these sensations, you reduce the secondary fear reaction that often amplifies social anxiety. When conducting exposures, it's helpful to use a technique called SUBODS, subjective units of distress scale, to track your anxiety levels before, during, and after each exercise. This allows you to objectively measure your progress over time. Many people are surprised to discover that their anxiety typically peaks within 10 minutes and then gradually subsides, even if they remain in the anxiety-provoking situation. While exposure therapy is incredibly effective, it can be challenging to implement on your own. Working with a therapist trained in cognitive behavioral therapy can provide the structure and support needed to make this process more manageable. However, self-directed exposure using books or apps can also be effective for many people with mild to moderate social anxiety. A word of caution: exposure should be challenging but not overwhelming. If you find yourself consistently rating situations at 8 or above on your anxiety scale, consider breaking them down into smaller steps or seeking professional guidance. The goal is to push your comfort zone gradually, not to traumatize yourself. Now that we've covered cognitive restructuring and exposure therapy, the two most empirically supported approaches for social anxiety, let's explore how mindfulness practices can complement these strategies and provide additional relief. Mindfulness has received increasing attention in psychological research and clinical practice over the past few decades, and for good reason. For those struggling with social anxiety, mindfulness offers powerful tools to manage anxious thoughts and uncomfortable physical sensations. At its core, mindfulness involves paying attention to the present moment with curiosity and without judgment qualities that directly counteract the future, focused worry and harsh self-criticism characteristic of social anxiety. One of the fundamental mindfulness skills relevant to social anxiety is simply learning to observe your anxious thoughts without automatically believing or acting on them. In mindfulness practice, you develop what's sometimes called metacognitive awareness, the ability to see thoughts as just mental events, not necessarily accurate reflections of reality. This closely aligns with the cognitive diffusion technique, we discussed earlier and provides a complementary approach to managing the negative thinking patterns that fuel social anxiety. A simple mindfulness exercise to develop this skill is the thoughts on clouds practice. Spend 5 minutes sitting quietly, imagining that your thoughts are clouds drifting across the sky of your mind. As anxious thoughts arise, perhaps they'll think I'm boring, or I'll make a fool of myself. Visualize placing each thought on a cloud and watching it drift away without holding on to it or pushing it away. This practice helps you develop a different relationship with anxious thoughts, seeing them as temporary mental events rather than defining truths. Mindfulness also helps address the physical symptoms of social anxiety by teaching you to relate differently to bodily sensations. Rather than interpreting a racing heart as dangerous or embarrassing, mindfulness encourages you to observe it with curiosity. Interesting, my heart is beating quickly right now. Through practices like the body scan meditation, where you systematically direct attention through different parts of your body with a non-judgmental attitude, you learn that uncomfortable sensations can be tolerated and don't need to control your behavior. Another valuable application of mindfulness for social anxiety is present moment awareness during social interactions. Social anxiety often involves excessive self-focus, monitoring your own performance, appearance, and anxiety symptoms rather than fully engaging in the conversation. By intentionally directing attention outward to really listen to the other person or notice details of your environment, you can reduce self-consciousness and improve the quality of your interactions. One simple exercise to practice this is the 45-4-3-2-1 technique. During moments of social anxiety, mentally name 5 things you can see, 4 things you can hear, 3 things you can feel physically, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. This grounds you in your sensory experience rather than anxious thoughts and helps redirect attention outward. Mindfulness also cultivates self-compassion, which is particularly important for people with social anxiety who often have a harsh inner critic. Self-compassion involves treating yourself with the same kindness and understanding you would offer a good friend facing difficulties. Research shows that greater self-compassion is associated with lower levels of social anxiety and more resilience in the face of social setbacks. To develop self-compassion, try this brief practice. Think of a recent social situation where you felt anxious or believed you performed poorly. Notice any self-critical thoughts that arise. Then, imagine a close friend told you they experienced the exact same situation and had the same thoughts. What would you say to them? How would your tone, words, and perspective differ? Now, try offering yourself the same compassionate response. It's worth noting that mindfulness shouldn't be used as an avoidance strategy. The goal isn't to eliminate anxiety, but to change your relationship with it. In fact, mindfulness pairs extremely well with exposure therapy. You can use mindfulness skills to stay present and tolerate discomfort during exposure exercises rather than escaping mentally or physically. For those interested in developing a more formal mindfulness practice, I recommend starting with just 5-10 minutes daily of focused breathing meditation. Sit comfortably, direct your attention to the physical sensations of breathing, and when your mind inevitably wanders, which is normal and expected, gently return your focus to your breath. Over time, this simple practice builds the attention control and non-reactivity that help manage social anxiety. Mobile apps like Headspace, Calm, and Insight Timer offer guided mindfulness meditations specifically designed for anxiety, making it easier to establish a consistent practice. Many of my clients find that even a brief daily mindfulness practice significantly enhances their ability to implement other strategies for managing social anxiety. Now, let's shift our focus to another crucial aspect of overcoming social anxiety: developing and refining social skills. Many people with social anxiety have perfectly adequate social skills, but doubt their abilities due to anxiety and excessive self-criticism. However, others may have had fewer opportunities to develop these skills because they've avoided social situations. Regardless of where you fall on this spectrum, intentionally building social competence can significantly reduce anxiety by increasing your confidence in social contexts. First, let's talk about conversation skills, often a major concern for those with social anxiety. Good conversation involves a balance of listening and sharing. Active listening means making eye contact, though this can be intermittent rather than constant, asking follow-up questions, and showing genuine interest through verbal and non-verbal cues like nodding or saying, "I see," or "Tell me more about that." When it comes to sharing about yourself, a helpful guideline is the traffic light rule. During the first 30 seconds of speaking green light, the other person is usually fully engaged. For the next 30 seconds yellow light, their interest may begin to wane if you don't circle back to them. After a minute red light, you should generally wrap up your point and re-engage them with a question, unless they're showing clear signs of continued interest. Small talk, often dreaded by those with social anxiety, serves an important social function. It establishes comfort and common ground before deeper conversation. Rather than seeing it as meaningless, consider it a necessary warm-up. Having a few reliable conversation starters can reduce anxiety, current events, though generally avoiding divisive topics. Shared experiences. How do you know the host? Or open-ended questions about the other person's interests or background work well. Remember the 4D technique: family, occupation, recreation, dreams for conversation topics that people generally enjoy discussing, and watch for opportunities to move from small talk to more meaningful conversation by picking up on hints of emotion or passion in what the other person shares. Non-verbal communication accounts for a large percentage of social meaning, so it's worth paying attention to your body language. Aim for an open posture, uncrossed arms, shoulders relaxed and slightly back. Make comfortable eye contact, focusing on one eye or the space between the eyes can make this easier. A genuine smile, even a slight one, goes a long way in establishing rapport. Practice moderating your speaking voice for clarity and engagement, not too soft which can signal insecurity, or too loud, which can be overwhelming. Varying your tone slightly prevents monotony and maintains listener interest. It's also helpful to develop graceful entry and exit strategies for social interactions. To join a conversation, try standing at the periphery of a group with open body language until there's a natural pause, then contribute something relevant. To exit, wait for a natural break, express appreciation for the conversation it was great talking with you about, and provide a brief, honest reason for moving on. If you struggle with assertiveness, as many with social anxiety do, start practicing clear, direct communication about your needs and boundaries. The basic assertiveness formula is: I feel high emotion when hey specific situation because hey reason. I would prefer hey requested change. For example, I feel uncomfortable when put on the spot in meetings because I need time to formulate my thoughts. I would prefer to be given topics in advance when possible. For many people with social anxiety, practicing these skills can feel overwhelming in real social situations initially. Role-playing with a therapist or trusted friend allows you to build confidence gradually. Social skills groups, though potentially anxiety-provoking at first, provide a supportive environment to practice with others who understand your challenges. Another effective approach is video feedback, recording yourself during practice conversations and reviewing it with a supportive person. People with social anxiety often have a distorted perception of how they appear to others, and video feedback can provide a more realistic assessment. Nearly always, my clients discover they appear far more composed and competent than they felt. Online and virtual reality platforms now offer additional opportunities to practice social skills in lower pressure environments. Apps like Joyable provide structured exercises, while VR programs can simulate challenging social scenarios for repeated practice. Remember that social skills, like any skills, improve with practice. Initial awkwardness is part of the learning process, not evidence of social incompetence. Each interaction is an opportunity to refine these abilities, and over time, increasing social competence creates a positive cycle. As you feel more confident in your skills, anxiety decreases, allowing you to be more present and further improve your social performance. Now, let's discuss how certain lifestyle factors can either exacerbate or alleviate social anxiety, and how making strategic modifications can support your recovery journey. The connection between physical and mental health is powerful, and nowhere is this more evident than with anxiety disorders. Regular physical exercise has been shown in numerous studies to significantly reduce anxiety symptoms, including those of social anxiety disorder. Exercise releases endorphins and other neurotransmitters that naturally elevate mood and reduce stress. Additionally, regular physical activity improves sleep quality, increases energy levels, and can enhance self-esteem, all factors that make social situations less taxing. Aim for at least 150 minutes of moderate aerobic exercise weekly. That's just 30 minutes, 5 days a week. Activities like brisk walking, swimming, cycling, or dancing are excellent options. If you're new to exercise, Start gradually and build up. Even small amounts of movement can make a difference. Some research suggests that exercises involving coordination and concentration, like yoga or Tai Chi, may be particularly beneficial for anxiety as they incorporate mindfulness elements. Speaking of mindfulness, incorporating brief meditation sessions into your daily routine can help manage the stress response that underlies social anxiety. Even 5-10 minutes daily of focused breathing or body scan meditation can reduce baseline anxiety levels and improve emotional regulation. The key is consistency rather than duration. A short daily practice is more beneficial than occasional longer sessions. Sleep quality and social anxiety have a bidirectional relationship. Anxiety can disrupt sleep, and poor sleep exacerbates anxiety symptoms. To improve sleep hygiene, establish a consistent sleep schedule, even on weekends. Create a relaxing bedtime routine, limit screen time before bed, ensure your bedroom is dark and comfortable, and avoid caffeine and alcohol in the hours before sleep. If you struggle with racing thoughts at bedtime, keeping a worry journal earlier in the evening can help. Download concerns before you try to sleep. Nutrition also plays a surprising role in anxiety management. Research indicates that diets high in processed foods, sugar, and refined carbohydrates may worsen anxiety symptoms, while diets rich in whole foods, lean proteins, complex carbohydrates, and omega-3 fatty acids support emotional stability. Reducing or eliminating alcohol is particularly important for social anxiety management. While it may temporarily reduce inhibitions, alcohol ultimately increases anxiety as it metabolizes, creates sleep disturbances, and can lead to dependence if used repeatedly as a social crutch. Caffeine is another substance worth monitoring carefully. As a stimulant, it can mimic or amplify the physical symptoms of anxiety like increased heart rate and jitteriness. Many people with social anxiety find that reducing caffeine intake significantly lowers their baseline anxiety level. If you're caffeine sensitive, consider gradually reducing your consumption and avoiding it entirely before anxiety-provoking social events. Time management and scheduling can also support your efforts to overcome social anxiety. Rather than completely avoiding anxiety-provoking events or filling your calendar with too many challenging situations at once, aim for a balanced approach. Schedule regular, manageable social activities that provide opportunities for practice without overwhelming you. Intersperse these with adequate recovery time and self-care activities. Consider the timing of social engagements relative to other life stressors. When possible, avoid scheduling challenging social situations during periods of high work stress or significant life transitions. However, don't use this as an excuse for indefinite avoidance. The goal is strategic timing, not elimination. Building a solid support network is crucial for managing social anxiety. This might include supportive friends or family members, a therapist, a support group, in person or online, or a combination of these. Being able to discuss your experiences with understanding individuals reduces isolation and provides encouragement during challenging periods of your recovery journey. Finally, consider how your physical environment affects your anxiety levels. Cluttered, chaotic spaces can subtly increase stress and cognitive load, leaving fewer mental resources available for managing social anxiety. Creating organized, calming spaces in your home, particularly areas where you prepare for social events or unwind afterward, can support your overall anxiety management efforts. Remember that lifestyle modifications complement rather than replace other treatment approaches like cognitive restructuring, exposure therapy, and social skills development. The most effective approach is typically a comprehensive one that addresses social anxiety from multiple angles: cognitive, behavioral, social, and physiological. Now, let's explore how technology can either help or hinder your progress in overcoming social anxiety and how to harness digital tools effectively. In today's digital world, technology plays an increasingly significant role in how we manage mental health challenges, including social anxiety. When used strategically, digital tools can provide valuable support for your recovery journey. However, they can also become avoidance mechanisms that ultimately reinforce anxiety. Let's look at how to navigate this digital landscape effectively. Therapeutic apps specifically designed for anxiety management have proliferated in recent years. Apps like CBT Thought Diary, MinShift, and Wabot provide structured tools for identifying and challenging anxious thoughts, while meditation apps like Headspace, Calm, and Insight Timer offer guided practices for developing mindfulness and emotional regulation skills. These apps make evidence-based techniques more accessible and allow for consistent practice between therapy sessions or as a self-help approach. Virtual reality, VR exposure therapy represents an exciting frontier in social anxiety treatment. VR programs can simulate anxiety, provoking social scenarios from public speaking to party conversations to job interviews in a controlled environment that allows for repeated practice. Research indicates that the brain responds to these virtual scenarios similarly to real-life situations, making them effective for exposure work while offering a stepping stone before facing more challenging real-world situations. As VR technology becomes more affordable and accessible, this approach holds significant promise for home-based anxiety treatment. Biofeedback and neurofeedback devices provide real-time information about physiological markers of anxiety, such as heart rate variability, muscle tension, or brainwave patterns. By making these invisible processes visible, these technologies help you develop greater awareness and control over your body's stress response. Devices like the Muse headband, Spire breathing tracker, or even smartwatch heart rate monitors can support your ability to recognize and regulate anxiety reactions before they escalate. Online therapy platforms have dramatically expanded access to professional psychological support. Services like BetterHelp, Talkspace, and Amwell connect users with licensed therapists for video, phone, or text-based therapy sessions. This format can be particularly appealing for those with social anxiety, as it removes transportation barriers and allows you to engage in therapy from the comfort of familiar surroundings. Many platforms now offer specialized programs for social anxiety that incorporate cognitive, behavioral techniques and exposure exercises. Support communities and forums provide connection with others who understand the challenges of social anxiety firsthand. Platforms like Health Unlocked, Reddit's Our Social Anxiety, or the Social Anxiety Support Forum allow you to share experiences, exchange coping strategies, and receive encouragement from peers. These communities can reduce isolation and normalize your experiences while providing motivation through others' success stories. Social skills development apps and programs offer structured ways to learn and practice interpersonal skills. Apps like Joyable provide CBT-based exercises specifically for social anxiety, while others like Speako or Ori focus on public speaking skills. These tools allow for low-pressure practice that builds confidence for real-world interactions. However, technology can also become problematic when it serves as an avoidance strategy. Excessive use of smartphones or social media during social situations, checking your phone repeatedly during conversations, or scrolling through feeds at parties can function as a safety behavior that prevents full engagement and reinforces anxiety. Similarly, replacing in-person interaction with online communication may provide short-term comfort, but limit opportunities for the real-world exposure necessary for lasting change. To use technology constructively, establish clear boundaries around device use in social contexts. Consider designating certain social situations as phone-free to practice being fully present. Use digital tools as supplements to, not substitutes for, in-person social engagement. And be honest with yourself about whether your technology use is supporting your goals or enabling avoidance. Social media deserves special attention in any discussion of social anxiety. These platforms can exacerbate anxiety through constant social comparison, fear of missing out, and heightened self-consciousness. However, they can also provide valuable opportunities for connection and practice. To foster a healthier relationship with social media, curate your feeds to include positive, supportive content, limit time spent passively scrolling, and focus on meaningful interaction rather than impression management. Consider periodic digital detoxes to reset your relationship with these platforms and observe how different patterns of use affect your anxiety levels. For those who struggle with public speaking anxiety, a common form of social anxiety, presentation technology offers helpful tools. Apps like Presenter View in PowerPoint provide speaker notes visible only to you, reducing memory-related anxiety. Presentation remote controls allow you to move around naturally instead of being tethered to your computer. And recording yourself presenting provides valuable feedback that often contradicts anxious perceptions of your performance. Remember that while technology offers valuable tools for managing social anxiety, the goal is to develop skills that transfer to real-world contexts. Use digital resources as scaffolding that supports your growth, with the ultimate aim of reducing reliance on technological aids as your natural confidence increases. Now that we've explored various strategies for managing social anxiety, I'd like to share some real-life success stories that illustrate how these approaches work in practice. These examples, with names and identifying details changed, demonstrate both the challenges of overcoming social anxiety and the tremendous possibility for transformation. Let me tell you about Jamie, a 28-year-old software developer who had struggled with social anxiety since adolescence. Jamie's anxiety was particularly intense in professional settings. He would avoid speaking in meetings, decline opportunities to present his work, and experience intense dread before team social events. This was starting to impact his career advancement, despite his technical brilliance. Jamie began with cognitive restructuring, identifying thought patterns like, if I speak up, I'll say something stupid and lose everyone's respect. And my anxiety is completely obvious to everyone. Through therapy, he learned to challenge these thoughts with evidence. Colleagues had responded positively to his ideas in the past, and feedback from trusted friends confirmed that his anxiety was far less visible than he perceived. He created an exposure hierarchy specifically for workplace scenarios, starting with asking one question in a small team meeting and gradually working up to presenting at department gatherings. A key insight came when Jamie realized he was using extensive preparation as a safety behavior, spending hours scripting exactly what he would say in meetings. While this temporarily reduced anxiety, it prevented him from developing confidence in his ability to think on his feet. With his therapist's guidance, he began deliberately entering some social situations with less preparation, discovering that he could indeed handle spontaneous interaction. After about 9 months of consistent practice, Jamie volunteered to lead a presentation at a company-wide event, something previously unimaginable to him. While he still experienced anxiety, it was manageable, and the successful presentation became a pivotal moment in his recovery. 3 years later, Jamie reports that while he still occasionally experiences social anxiety, it no longer controls his behavior or limits his professional growth. Then there's Sophia, a 42-year-old single mother whose social anxiety centered on parent-teacher events and social interactions with other parents. She described feeling like an imposter among the other parents and was convinced they judged her parenting abilities. This anxiety had begun to affect her daughter, who noticed her mother's reluctance to engage in school community activities. Sophia's recovery journey emphasized self-compassion work alongside cognitive and behavioral strategies. She realized she held herself to impossibly high standards as both a parent and social being. Through compassion-focused exercises, she developed a kinder inner voice that acknowledged her strengths as a parent and the universal challenges of social connection. Mindfulness practices helped Sophia recognize how her anxiety pulled her attention inward during social interactions, preventing her from being fully present. She practiced redirecting her focus outward during conversations with other parents, which paradoxically reduced her self-consciousness and improved the quality of these interactions. A turning point came when Sophia joined the school's parent committee, an exposure exercise that initially triggered intense anxiety. However, the regular interaction with the same group of parents allowed her to build comfort gradually and develop genuine connections. About a year into her treatment, Sophia volunteered to organize a school fundraising event, something she described as liberating rather than terrifying. Her daughter noticed and commented on the change, which reinforced Sophia's motivation to continue facing her fears. Another inspiring example is Marcus, a 35-year-old who had avoided dating for over a decade due to severe anxiety about romantic rejection. Marcus's social anxiety had a strong body image component. He was convinced that his slight stutter and what he perceived as physical imperfections would make him inherently undesirable to potential partners. Marcus began with virtual reality exposure therapy, which allowed him to practice dating conversations in a controlled environment. This built his confidence enough to begin in-person exposures, starting with brief conversations with baristas or store clerks, and eventually progressing to attending meetup groups related to his interests. A crucial element of Marcus's recovery was developing genuine curiosity about others. His therapist helped him recognize that his intense self-focus during social interactions not only increased his anxiety, but also prevented him from learning about the people he met. By consciously shifting his attention to discovering what made others interesting, he became a better conversationalist and found interactions more rewarding. Digital dating platforms initially served as both opportunity and challenge for Marcus. While they provided a lower-pressure way to initiate contact, They also triggered anxious rumination about message content and response timing. Working with his therapist, Marcus developed healthy boundaries around dating app use and specific strategies for managing the uncertainty inherent in online dating. After about 18 months of consistent work, Marcus began a relationship with someone he met at a community workshop. He reports that while dating still triggers some anxiety, it's now accompanied by excitement rather than dread. Importantly, he's able to be authentic rather than presenting a carefully managed version of himself designed to prevent rejection. Finally, there's Lynn, a 63-year-old recent retiree who had struggled with social anxiety throughout her career as an accountant. While her professional role had provided a structured context for interaction, retirement left her facing unstructured social situations that triggered intense anxiety. She wanted to build a fulfilling social life in retirement, but found herself increasingly isolated. Lynn's treatment focused heavily on social skills development and lifestyle modifications. She joined a structured group therapy program for social anxiety, which provided weekly opportunities for supported exposure and feedback. The age diversity in the group helped Lynn recognize that social anxiety affects people across the lifespan and that it's never too late to make changes. Physical activity became a cornerstone of Lynn's anxiety management strategy. She joined a walking group, which provided regular social contact in a context where conversation could happen naturally alongside activity, reducing pressure. The exercise itself also noticeably reduced her baseline anxiety level. Lynn used scheduling as a strategic tool, ensuring she had at least 2 social activities each week, enough for meaningful practice without overwhelming her. She discovered that morning activities worked better for her, as anxiety had less time to build throughout the day. A pivotal moment came when Lynn volunteered to teach a basic financial literacy workshop at her local community center. Drawing on her professional expertise provided confidence, while the teaching role challenged her social anxiety in a new way. The positive feedback she received became a powerful reference point that contradicted her anxious beliefs about social inadequacy. 3 years into retirement, Lynn has developed a rich social network and reports that while she still experiences some anxiety before new social situations, it no longer prevents her from pursuing meaningful engagement. Her story illustrates that significant change is possible at any age, and that the skills developed through facing social anxiety continue to grow over time. These success stories highlight several important patterns. First, recovery from social anxiety is typically gradual rather than sudden. It involves consistent practice over months or years, with progress occurring in a 2 steps forward, 1 step back pattern rather than a straight line. Second, different strategies prove particularly helpful for different individuals, highlighting the importance of a personalized approach. And third, while complete elimination of social anxiety may not be realistic for everyone, learning to manage anxiety effectively so that it no longer limits your life choices is absolutely achievable. Now, let's discuss some special considerations for overcoming social anxiety in specific contexts that many people find particularly challenging. Public speaking anxiety, or glossophobia, is extremely common. Surveys consistently show it's one of the most prevalent fears, often rated even higher than the fear of death. If presentations, speeches, or speaking up in meetings triggers your anxiety, there are targeted strategies that can help. Preparation is key, but with an important caveat: prepare your content thoroughly, but avoid trying to memorize your presentation word for word. Memorization increases anxiety because any deviation feels like a failure, and if you lose your place, recovery is difficult. Instead, internalize your key points and practice explaining them conversationally. This approach allows for more natural delivery and greater flexibility if something unexpected occurs. Consider the 3-23 strategy. For presentation preparation, identify the 3 main points you want the audience to remember and think of 3 supporting elements, examples, statistics, stories for each main point. This creates a solid structure while being simple enough to hold in memory even when anxious. Physical preparation is equally important. Practice your presentation standing up, using any visual aids you'll have available, and ideally in the actual space where you'll be presenting if possible. Record yourself practicing or present to supportive friends for feedback. Arrive early to become comfortable with the environment and test any technology. On the day of your presentation, manage physical anxiety through deep breathing and progressive muscle relaxation. The 4-7-8 breathing technique is particularly effective. Inhale for 4 counts, Hold for 7 counts, exhale for 8 counts, and repeat several times. This activates your parasympathetic nervous system, countering the fight or flight response. During your presentation, focus on connection rather than perfection. Make eye contact with friendly faces in different parts of the room, spending 3-5 seconds with each person before moving on. Remember that audiences generally want speakers to succeed and are far more interested in your content than in critiquing your performance. If you make a mistake or lose your train of thought, avoid apologizing repeatedly, which only draws more attention to the issue. Instead, pause, breathe, consult your notes if needed, and continue. A confident recovery often impresses audiences more than flawless delivery. For those with severe public speaking anxiety, groups like Toastmasters provide supportive environments to practice regularly with structured feedback. Many participants report that the consistent exposure in a positive context dramatically reduces their anxiety over time. Another particularly challenging context for many people with social anxiety is dating and romantic situations. The combination of potential rejection, physical attraction, and uncertainty creates a perfect storm for anxiety. However, with targeted strategies, dating can become an enjoyable rather than dreaded experience. Start by clarifying your values regarding relationships rather than focusing exclusively on anxiety reduction. Understanding what matters most to you, whether it's emotional connection, shared interests, mutual growth, or other values, provides direction and purpose that can help transcend anxiety. Online dating can serve as a graduated exposure approach, allowing you to practice conversational skills through messaging before meeting in person. However, avoid extensive messaging before meeting, as this can create an idealized image that increases pressure when you do meet face to face. Aim to meet briefly in person relatively soon if initial conversations go well. When planning dates, consider activities rather than just meals or drinks. Engaging in an activity together, whether it's a cooking class, museum visit, or casual hike, provides natural conversation material and reduces the pressure of continuous face-to-face interaction. Having something to do with your hands and body can also help manage physical anxiety symptoms. Remember that authentic connection requires some vulnerability, which naturally triggers anxiety. Instead of trying to present a perfectly polished version of yourself, practice appropriate self-disclosure, sharing your genuine thoughts, feelings, and experiences gradually as comfort and trust develop. This authenticity actually facilitates deeper connection than perfectionistic self-presentation. If rejection occurs, approach it with self-compassion rather than seeing it as confirmation of anxious beliefs about your desirability. Compatibility involves numerous factors, and a mismatch doesn't reflect your worth as a person. Having a post-date self-care plan can help manage any anxiety or disappointment that arises. Workplace social anxiety presents its own unique challenges, as career advancement often depends on social skills and visibility. If you struggle with workplace social anxiety, start by identifying specific situations that trigger anxiety, whether it's speaking in meetings, networking events, performance reviews, or casual lunchroom conversation, and create targeted exposure practices for each context. Find a workplace ally, a supportive colleague who understands your challenges and can provide encouragement or feedback. This person might accompany you to challenging social events initially or give you honest feedback about how your anxiety is perceived by others, which is typically far less noticeable than you feared. Prepare concise contributions for meetings in advance, and if possible, let the meeting leader know you'd like to speak on a particular topic. This creates accountability while giving you time to organize your thoughts. Starting with brief, factual contributions can build confidence for more spontaneous participation later. For networking events, set manageable goals based on quality rather than quantity of interactions, such as having 2 meaningful conversations, rather than collecting a certain number of business cards. Prepare a few open-ended questions relevant to your industry to use as conversation starters. If your workplace social anxiety is significantly impacting your performance or advancement opportunities, consider whether reasonable accommodations might be helpful. Many organizations will work with employees to find solutions, such as receiving meeting agendas in advance, having alternative ways to contribute ideas, or working with a coach to develop specific professional communication skills. School and academic settings can be particularly challenging for those with social anxiety, whether as a student or parent. If classroom participation is anxiety-provoking, speak with instructors about your challenges and discuss alternative ways to demonstrate engagement. Many educators will appreciate your proactive approach and work with you to find accommodations that still meet learning objectives. For group projects, taking a role that aligns with your strengths can reduce anxiety while still ensuring you contribute meaningfully. Gradually challenge yourself to take on more interactive roles as your comfort increases. Study groups with supportive peers can provide lower pressure opportunities to practice academic social skills. Parents with social anxiety often worry about how their anxiety affects their children. Remember that modeling healthy anxiety management, including seeking appropriate help and gradually facing fears, teaches children valuable emotional regulation skills. Rather than trying to hide your anxiety completely, use age-appropriate language to explain your experiences and the steps you're taking to manage them. For social gatherings of all types, arrival timing can significantly impact anxiety levels. Arriving early to parties or events allows you to acclimate to the space and engage in one-on-one conversations as others arrive, which many people with social anxiety find easier than entering a room already full of group conversations. Having a role or task at social events, such as helping the host, taking photos, or being in charge of music provides structure and purpose that can reduce self-consciousness. Similarly, bringing a dish to share gives both a conversation starter and a brief respite from social interaction when serving it. If you feel overwhelmed during social gatherings, taking brief strategic breaks can help reset your anxiety levels. A few minutes of mindful breathing in a restroom or quiet corner, or a short walk outside, can prevent anxiety from escalating to unmanageable levels. The key is to return to the social situation after your break rather than using it as an escape. Now, let's address a question that many people working to overcome social anxiety ask. When should I seek professional help, and what types of treatment are available? While self-help strategies can be effective for mild to moderate social anxiety, professional treatment is worth considering in several circumstances. If social anxiety significantly impairs your daily functioning, relationships, or career, if self-help efforts haven't produced meaningful improvement after several months, if social anxiety occurs with other mental health challenges like depression or substance use, or if you experience suicidal thoughts, in which case, please seek help immediately through a crisis line or emergency services. Several types of professional treatment have strong research support for social anxiety. Cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, is considered the gold standard psychological treatment, with numerous studies demonstrating its effectiveness. CBT for social anxiety typically includes the cognitive, restructuring, and exposure techniques we've discussed, along with additional strategies tailored to your specific needs. Treatment usually involves 12-16 weekly sessions, though this varies based on individual factors. Acceptance and commitment therapy, a CT, is another evidence-based approach that focuses on accepting anxious thoughts and feelings while committing to behaviors aligned with your values. Rather than directly challenging anxious thoughts, ACT emphasizes creating distance from them and reducing their influence over your behavior. This approach may be particularly helpful for people who find that trying to control or eliminate anxiety paradoxically increases it. Group therapy for social anxiety offers the unique advantage of built-in exposure opportunities with others who understand your challenges. Cognitive behavioral group therapy, CBGT, has been extensively researched and found highly effective for social anxiety. The mutual support and normalization of experiences in these groups can be tremendously healing. For some individuals, medication may be helpful alongside psychological treatments. Selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, SSRIs, are typically the first-line medication treatment for social anxiety disorder. These medications can reduce anxiety symptoms and make it easier to engage in the behavioral changes needed for long-term improvement. Beta blockers may be prescribed for specific performance situations to reduce physical symptoms like trembling or racing heart. Medication decisions should be made in consultation with a psychiatrist or primary care physician who can discuss potential benefits and side effects based on your specific situation. When seeking a therapist for social anxiety, look for someone with specific experience in anxiety disorders and training in evidence-based treatments like CBT or ACT. Many therapists offer a brief initial consultation to discuss their approach and experience, which can help you assess whether they're the right fit for your needs. If in-person therapy isn't accessible due to location, cost, or other barriers, telehealth therapy and guided self-help programs are increasingly available options. Research indicates that therapist-guided self-help programs based on CBT principles can be quite effective for social anxiety, often comparable to traditional therapy for mild to moderate symptoms. Support groups, both in person and online, can complement professional treatment by providing community and reducing isolation. While not a substitute for therapy, these groups offer understanding from others with similar experiences and practical strategies for daily management of social anxiety. As you consider professional help, remember that seeking treatment is a sign of strength, not weakness. Social anxiety is a common and treatable condition, and working with trained professionals can significantly accelerate your progress toward the socially connected life you desire. Before we conclude, I'd like to address some frequently asked questions about social anxiety that clients often bring to therapy sessions. One common question is, will I ever completely overcome social anxiety, or will I always have to manage it? The answer varies somewhat by individual. Many people experience significant reduction in social anxiety symptoms through treatment to the point where it no longer meaningfully impacts their lives. Others find that some anxiety persists, but becomes manageable through the skills they've developed. Think of it like learning to swim. Initially, you're focused on every movement and staying afloat, but with practice, swimming becomes natural and requires little conscious effort, even though you still need to use the skills you've learned. Another frequent concern is it normal to have good days and bad days with social anxiety? Absolutely. Recovery from social anxiety is rarely a linear process. Progress typically involves overall improvement with periodic setbacks. Factors like stress, sleep, physical health, and significant life changes can temporarily intensify anxiety symptoms even after significant progress. These fluctuations don't indicate failure, but are a normal part of the change process. The key is to continue applying the skills you've learned even during difficult periods, rather than reverting to avoidance. Many people also wonder, how do I explain my social anxiety to others? Should I tell people about it? There's no single right answer to this question. Selective disclosure to trusted individuals can provide valuable support and understanding. When choosing to disclose, brief, matter-of-fact explanations often work best. I sometimes get anxious in social situations, so I might seem quiet at first, but I'm working on it. However, you're never obligated to share your mental health experiences if you don't want to. Many people successfully manage social anxiety without explicitly discussing it with most people in their lives. Some clients ask, how is social anxiety different from introversion? This is an important distinction. Introversion is a personality trait involving a preference for quieter environments and a need to recharge alone after social interaction. It's not inherently problematic or associated with fear. Social anxiety, conversely, involves significant fear and distress about social judgment, regardless of personality type. Many introverts don't experience social anxiety, and many extroverts do. Understanding the difference can help clarify whether your social tendencies reflect anxiety that would benefit from intervention, or simply a preference for certain types of interaction. Another common question is, can social media help or hurt social anxiety? The answer is, it depends on how you use it. Social media can become problematic when used as a complete substitute for in-person interaction, when it triggers excessive social comparison, or when it becomes a safety behavior, like checking your phone whenever conversations feel uncomfortable. However, it can be helpful as a supplement to in-person socializing, a way to maintain connections, or even as a graduated step toward more direct interaction. The key is mindful, intentional use aligned with your goals for managing social anxiety. Parents often ask, how can I tell if my child has social anxiety versus normal shyness, and how can I help them? While shyness is a temperamental trait involving wariness in new social situations, social anxiety in children typically involves significant distress, avoidance of age, appropriate activities, and interference with normal development. If you're concerned about your child, consultation with a child psychologist can provide clarity. Parents can help by modeling healthy social behavior, providing gentle opportunities for social exposure without forcing participation, praising brave behavior rather than just successful outcomes, and avoiding labeling their child as she or anxious, which can become a self-fulfilling identity. Finally, many people ask, how long does it take to overcome social anxiety? This varies considerably based on anxiety severity, duration, individual factors, consistency of practice, and treatment approach. Some people notice significant improvement within a few months of dedicated work, while for others, meaningful change takes a year or more. Rather than focusing on a time frame for complete recovery, it's often more helpful to track incremental progress through specific behavioral goals, like speaking up more frequently in meetings or initiating conversations with new people. These concrete achievements provide motivation and evidence of change even when subjective anxiety feelings take longer to shift. As we approach the conclusion of our discussion on overcoming social anxiety, I want to emphasize that the journey towards social confidence is profoundly worthwhile. While facing social fears involves temporary discomfort, the rewards of meaningful connection, authentic self-expression, and expanded life opportunities are immeasurable. Remember that progress in overcoming social anxiety isn't about eliminating all anxious feelings. It's about developing a new relationship with anxiety where it no longer controls your choices. Courage isn't the absence of fear, but the decision to move forward despite it. Each time you take a small step outside your comfort zone, you're building evidence that you can handle social situations even when they trigger anxiety. Be patient and compassionate with yourself throughout this process. Change takes time, and setbacks are an inevitable part of growth, not evidence of failure. Celebrate your successes, no matter how small they might seem. Each phone call made, question asked, or invitation accepted represents progress worth acknowledging. The strategies we've discussed, cognitive restructuring, exposure therapy, mindfulness practices, social skills development, lifestyle modifications, and technological aids provide a comprehensive toolkit for managing social anxiety. Different approaches will resonate more strongly with different individuals, so experiment to discover what works best for you. Often, combining multiple strategies creates the most powerful effect. If you're supporting someone with social anxiety, whether as a friend, family member, teacher, or colleague, your patience and understanding are invaluable gifts. Avoid well-intentioned but unhelpful advice like just relax or you have nothing to worry about. Instead, recognize their efforts, respect their boundaries, and provide encouragement without pressure. Your belief in their capacity to grow can be a powerful catalyst for change. For those directly experiencing social anxiety, know that you're far from alone. Social anxiety is one of the most common psychological challenges, affecting people of all ages, backgrounds, and personality types. Many people who now lead socially connected lives once struggled intensely with the same fears you're facing. Your anxiety does not define you. It's simply one aspect of your current experience, not a permanent limitation or character flaw. I've witnessed countless individuals transform their relationship with social anxiety, moving from lives constrained by fear to lives rich with meaningful connection. This transformation doesn't happen overnight, but rather through consistent small steps and a willingness to experience discomfort in service of what matters most to you. The path isn't always easy, but those who have walked it consistently report that it leads to greater freedom, authenticity, and joy. As you continue your journey towards social confidence, remember that resources are available to support you, whether through self-help materials, support groups, digital tools, or professional treatment. You don't have to face social anxiety alone. Reaching out for support is itself an act of courage that can accelerate your progress. My sincere hope is that the strategies and insights we've explored today will serve as valuable companions on your path to overcoming social anxiety. Each person's journey is unique, but the destination, a life where anxiety no longer limits your choices or prevents meaningful connection, is absolutely achievable. With patience, practice, and self-compassion, you can develop the social confidence to engage fully in the relationships and opportunities that matter most to you. Thank you for joining me for this episode of Psychology Insights. If you found this information helpful, please consider subscribing to our channel for more content on psychological well-being and personal growth. Your comments and questions are always valuable. They help shape future episodes and create a community of support for everyone on their mental health journey. If you know someone who might benefit from these strategies for overcoming social anxiety, please share this video with them. Your simple act of sharing might be the first step in their transformation. Until next time, I'm Dr. Michael Harris, wishing you courage, connection, and confidence in all your social endeavors.